Tell me to restrain myself.
Edited. All right, here we go.
I don't know. I want you editing me. I don't like being edited and censored.
I will only edit that first word. This is all going to stay.
How about a check? How many swears do I get?
Word jar right here. You get 5.
I get 5.
Yeah.
Now are these the big ones or are these the minor ones?
You get 1 big one and then 4 minor.
I don't know.
2 big ones, 4 minor, 3 minor.
What's the discount for prepayment?
Yeah, can I just put like 100 in there and just go for it?
Wow, you guys are just a handful. Maybe I shouldn't have put both of you in the room together. Quick introductions. It is my idea. You're right. It's my bad. I take full responsibility. Welcome to the North Idaho Experience. I have 2 of my good friends here today. Sam, you're not in the. If you're not watching, say hi, Sam.
Hi, Sam.
There you go. That's Sam. We've known each other for since 2010?
Yeah, about there.
We worked in a patrol car quite a few nights. We went to a lot of riots. We did a lot of cool stuff together. So there was a time when I could say that I knew him better than my wife. That's no longer the case, and not in any weird way.
I don't know about know better, but definitely spend more time together.
There you go. Okay, that's good.
You say no. That sounds a little awkward there.
I didn't mean to go there. And then we have my good friend BZ. He owns North Idaho Arms over in Post Falls. Wealth of information on the firearms side. And I wanted these 2 guys to come on today because I wanted to talk about some political stuff. And I'm not the best in that world. And I think you guys are both pretty good there. So we're going to dive into that. We're going to talk. We might talk about some riots a little bit. Might talk about some gun stuff. And I think Sam's going to tell me about a Cybertruck. So
It's almost riot season.
it is.
Yeah.
I do. I miss riot season
Thank you.
so much.
See? Thank you.
Did you guys see the celebration in Oakland yesterday?
No. So
There's a YouTube video going around of a celebration that happened yesterday on the 19th, and there was
What is it, Juneteenth?
it was Juneteenth celebration. There, it sounded like Somalia.
Sam and I have been to Oakland dozens of times in the riot capacity, and we have some damn good stories from Oakland.
Yeah.
Some good times in Oakland.
I know. I was talking to a guy. We did it should actually be the last podcast, a Coeur d'Alene PD guy that came up here from LAPD, and he's like, yeah, big reason he moved out was the riots. And I was like, and I always tell people like the riots were the most fun that I had on the job, and maybe that's because being a trooper is like maybe it's not as cool as being a cop. I don't know. But really, like the best times as a cop I had were deploying to riots.
I think most of that has to do with the people you're with.
Yeah.
As a trooper during riot season, did you ever like, man, I wish I could just get back to writing speeding tickets?
Negative. Never. And maybe that's
like your fingers never cramped up,
Right.
or like you were fatigued from like, man, I wish.
I'm pretty sure the words I'd rather get back to riding speeding tickets has never come out of my mouth until now.
So Sam and I, we were both grenadiers. Shout out to Squad 6 on Valley Division SRT on one of the most active riot teams with the California Highway Patrol. And they're 8 divisions, 9?
You think I'd know that, but no.
I don't know. 8 or 9.
And you guys were dedicated grenadiers.
Yes. So
pop and see.
deployed gas. We did, not very often. But what we carried in the most recent riots are a 40 millimeter, you'd call it like a grenade launcher, but we didn't have
Sponge
that.
round is what we called it. Shot out of a 40 millimeter.
So it's like a
40 millimeter grenade launcher.
hard rubber bullet, very accurate. We had aim point pros on top. Like you could hit a thigh at 120 feet all day long. And we also fired aerial flashbangs. So they had a 50-meter timed fuse. And
bird bombs. Yeah.
we found, so when we went into the George Floyd riots, our loadout was like 2 flashbangs to 20 sponge rounds. And what was like a day into it?
Well, all I got to tell people is, so we're on the team. We had our minimum loadout of sponge rounds and then, like I said, 2 aerials. And we would always double up on that, being the young guys. And the old guys would look at us and shake their heads. And you're never going to use that. And for the most part, that was true. You're never going to use it. We had one guy on the team, one time, fire 1 less lethal beanbag round.
Shout out to OROD.
In all the years that we've been doing riots. One guy, 1 round, 1 time.
It's not as common as people think. And the reason, so we had to be responsible for every round that left the gun, right? Just like a normal bullet. And those, even though they're less lethal, they can still kill someone for sure if you hit them in the eye or something. So, and when you're working a riot line, which we did a lot, we deployed down. Our main priority was to keep people off the freeways, right? But they always go to the freeways. So we're always in the shit. And like when you're working that line, it's really hard to get a shot angle, right? Because they'll always put like the normal chill people up in the front at the riot, and all the shitbags will be in the back throwing stuff over. So it's really hard.
And that shitbags using civilians as human
Crazy,
targets,
huh? I
human
can't imagine
shields.
that. Can't imagine that.
Cowards.
What I was going to say before Seth interrupted me.
Well, I was laying the groundwork for you.
So what I tell people is you had one guy one time fire one round, and this is in the years that would have been on the team. And George Floyd changed everything overnight, because in one night we went from having one guy on the team ever firing a round to we expended all our munitions in one night.
That's crazy.
It was banana. I'm going to take credit as being the first chippy to fire the 40 millimeter round into somebody. I think
At least on the Valley Division.
I'm just going to say statewide because no one can prove me wrong. So there you go.
I could probably find some from Golden Gate Division that could put up a claim against you. Let me know if you want me to do that.
But so it's funny because we had this plan, right? All the training was we fire the sponge round and they hit hard. Like they could drop someone potentially. And then we send out an arrest squad and we hook this dude up and take him into jail, the whole deal. And we practice it over and over again. First time I deploy a sponge round is dude, we're in South Sac off the freeway. Like it got violent real quick. Yeah. And I see this dude, like they were throwing shit. I see this dude pick up a rock and like, I got a fence on the left side of me and then the line's on my right, but there's this gap and I just got a clear shot. I'm like, oh my God, I go clear shot. Boom, pop the dude. And I'm like, arrest squad. And it's pure chaos and nobody heard me. And it was like, nope. All right, dude ran off. I'm like, okay, clearly all of that training is out the window. And now tactics are going to change.
We did years of training. So we had initially started with very dispersed munitions, things like the Sting balls, 37 millimeter shoots out, kind of like buckshot, which we have been shot with to let everyone know. It's not going to kill you. We have to get shot with it to qualify. And we went from that kind of riot suppression, which we didn't actually fire. And state of California said you can't do that. It's indiscriminate use of force. You can't just go and hose down an entire crowd with pellets. So that's when they mandated you need to have a specific target. You need to hit them in a specific go zone versus a no-go zone. And you have to have a articulable reason to be using that force. Essentially, you firing that sponge round is equivalent of swinging a baton at somebody. So you have to have a reason for having done it. And then, of course, you have to make every attempt to identify that person, send down an arrest squad, because if you're using force against them, that means they violated the law. You've got to arrest them, charges, and all that. And so we changed to training for if you shoot someone, you identify that person. We even talked about having paintballs so we could shoot them paintballs so we can, later on say, hey, that guy with the orange paint on him. The moment shit hit the fan, it became obvious that was absolutely not possible to do. And it just changed everything overnight.
We quickly realized, okay, the loadout was completely wrong. And we switched and completely flipped it. Now I was carrying 20 flashbangs and like 4 or 5 sponge rounds.
I carried more because I needed more sponge rounds.
Yeah, Sam had more hits than me.
I do believe I still hold the division record. I won't say what it is, but I'm pretty sure
I don't think anyone will ever break it because they unleashed us for like a week and then it was like, okay.
Yeah. Reel it back
Shackles are back on. We're not doing that anymore.
Well, I mean, that's how desperately things changed. We went from, like I said, this all book training to overnight, we were using everything we carry. We went from 2 flashbangs and a bunch of sponge to just lobbing flashbangs all the time and hitting people directly with sponge rounds. And the first night, I hit probably at least 4 people the first night with sponge rounds. And I wrote down descriptions of what they looked like, where it was, the time. I got officers that were next to me that was witnesses so I can make a report later on. And a couple of days went by and I was still making all these notes. And then our chief came up and it's like, you just tell me how many people you've hit. And that's the only thing we want to know about. And I just shredded those notes because I don't have to write a report. And for a week there, you couldn't even find munitions. The entire nation, all the munitions were sold out. We had guys back at the academy. Their sole job was to try to find munitions somewhere in the United States. Because, I mean, shit was hitting the fan. It was hitting the fan pretty hard.
We had one engagement, and this is like, out of many. On I-5, we're in a lower position, so there's elevated walls above us. They're throwing rocks and bottles down on our guys. We fired 70 flashbangs in that one engagement on I-5. It was bananas. Yeah, it was pretty cool. I mean, they were effective. Like the flashbangs were very effective. And in that particular one, I'm retired now. I can say this. I don't care. Normally you fire them up at a 45-degree angle, like well over people's heads. These dudes were on the top of this wall throwing like chunks of concrete, easily could kill an officer. I was personally putting those sponge rounds like directly over their head because they'd kind of sit back from the wall. So you didn't have a clear shot. You couldn't hit them with a sponge round, just like directly over their heads. just trying to keep them back long enough to keep the guys safe. It was pretty wild.
And we actually learned, I mean, this is obviously not the way you're trained, but we learned that if they had a tree near them, it was great to fire that round into the tree, and then that concussion would go off and then blow debris and leaves on them. And they don't know what's happening, and they think they just had a near miss and they just survived it, and they would disperse. And it was a fantastic tool for that. Although I don't know how long that will continue to be. Yeah, I'm assuming at some point they learn and wise up.
Yeah. So good job. Now the National Arbor Association is going to come after you for
hey, I was getting them work.
Trees.
That might be the worst thing that happens out of that.
But you're talking about threading to the crowd. I got pretty good at putting a line. You know, you'd see people, the whole crowd. You have that wall of the normal protesters, but the bad people you want that are chucking the stuff are behind them. And you'd learn how to track on them and wait till you got the opening and just fire that round right through, hit that gap. See, and you're like, I hope the hippie chick in the dress doesn't step forward because the round just went right by her.
That's what we saw in Bellevue, right? Like, you know, where we worked at was real close to the Bellevue Mall, the Bravern, you know, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, all of that. And we watched Bellevue PD and the TAC teams starting to stack up with the Bearcat and start to get ready. And we would just see stream loads of cars pulling in, getting off the freeway, you know, of course, all black hoodies, hoods up, masks on, sunglasses, gloves. And it's like, man, you're really taking this COVID thing serious. And they would just go right to the mall. And you had people that were there that were protesting, that they were trying to show their anger and frustration at the situation that was happening in America. And then you had the agitators.
Yep.
And the unfortunately, I think the people that were there that were trying to protest and make their feelings heard were used as pawns by those agitators. Because as soon as those agitators got there and they started kind of whipping up the crowds, and like at the mall, as soon as the first pane of glass fell, it was like ants running into, you know, and it was just, you know, things were getting looted. And then, you know, you and I've talked before about how Bellevue Police Department, and obviously I don't represent the Bellevue Police Department, but how the Bellevue Police Department responded with the chief of police taking a knee and, you know, trying to
appease
versus letting his trained professionals go and protect the citizenry and the property of the city of Bellevue. He didn't want to do that, right? He was so worried about, you know, all the cameras that were out there. And I get it, but I don't get it.
No, and then we've seen this many times. Like, if you hit those agitators hard and fast and with overwhelming violence, like, the shit stops immediately.
You can shut it down quick.
Yep. If you let it build, it's almost
for the most part. If you punch a dude in the mouth, he's either going to come back at you and you're now in a scrap, or it's over. It's done. Yeah. And it's just everybody living on the computer nowadays, right? Everybody's tough behind a computer. And then, you know, they get out in the real world, and then you let that kind of pervasive, you're permissive with that. You let that happen, and it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse.
Well, when it comes to the riots too, and I mean, we're not even going to talk about how the media reports on it, but when it comes to riots, people don't understand that the difference between a protest and a riot. You'll have 95% of those people are there for the protest. A lot of people, you know, they're just kind of there, they're younger crowd, and they want to kind of be there for a good time, feel like they're part of something. But 95% of those people are going to be completely peaceful. They're never going to do anything. And then you have a small element that will do something. And there's people that are actually paid, have gone to school to learn how to do this, and they're paid to agitate a crowd and to start people fighting.
Dangerously like a conspiracy theory, Sam.
Well, you can think whatever you want, but it is well documented that there are people that are trained to do this. They travel the country. They actually get paid to do it. You can make anywhere from $30,000 to $100,000 a year being a trained professional agitator.
Dude, we'd be so good at that.
Yeah, the problem is we have something to lose, because the moment we get arrested, we get pegged as the right-wing radicals. We're probably one in the downfall of every single color person in America, and we're white supremacists is what we're going to get labeled, and then we lose our houses, our businesses, and everything we've ever worked for.
Doesn't sound very fun when you put it that way.
Just remember, though, that those 8 dudes that you're hanging out with, 7 of them are feds.
Yeah, especially if you're in Michigan or Minnesota or wherever that was.
The 8 dudes that are conspiring with you to go cause havoc, 7 of them are feds.
I like from an overarching concept of the riots, and people are like, why did you like that? And I think for me, it was one, it took me out of the normal job. You know, it's something different. But two, it's like, who else gets a front row seat to like the standing on the edge of order and looking at pure chaos? Like, I'm honored to have been in those positions and watched Oakland burn. And not that that's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but like, what a unique experience to bear witness to that.
It's fascinating to be actually there on a front row seat and see it, because not only do you, I mean, you'll never know what it's like unless you're there to experience it, but you're not even going to see a true and accurate accounting of what that's like,
Right.
because the media certainly is not going to show it.
Right.
The only way you're ever going to know is either you're on one side of that line trying to hold that thin blue line between anarchy and chaos and order, or you're on the other side as part of the protest and the mob and the riot.
Yeah. And I should say 90% of the time we got deployed, it was a true peaceful protest, and we didn't do anything. We're just there just in case.
Sometimes that's because we were there.
Right.
And when the agitators showed up, if we shut them down, it made it peaceful. And, you know, sun goes down and eventually people go home. Or you're out there until 2, 3 in the morning and it's just an entire just mob and you're trying to keep the city from being burnt down.
So question. So 90% of the time you guys show up, nothing bad's going on.
Yep.
So in those times, were you as law enforcement, were you welcomed, or were people upset that you were there?
Depends on the crowd.
Okay.
Right. If it's we had plenty of protests at the Capitol that were conservative crowds, like protesting mask mandates, things like that.
I want to say plenty. That was
true.
abnormal. We went to a few that were conservative.
Those people loved us. Right.
Yeah.
Other side. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were the symbol of oppression to them.
Yeah, we become a focus for them to take out their angst and their anger and everything else. But let's not forget, I mean, how many times were you sitting there, man in a line somewhere? There wasn't a mob. You're just holding an intersection or something. And you would have a group of people, 2, 3, 4, to come up behind you, and they'll be polite and they say, sir, excuse me, we need to walk over there. And you're not there to stop people from walking down the block or going to the cafe on the corner. You let them through. And we're like, oh, yeah, sure. And we'd step aside and let them through. And then you'd see them an hour later on the front line of that mob going by, chanting F the police and throwing shit at you. And then 2 hours later, the mob's gone. And you're still holding the same intersection. They'll come by and, excuse me, sir, our car's parked over there. Can we get there? And we're like, sure, yeah. Hope you had a good time. See you next time.
Yeah.
Catch you at the next riot.
Yeah.
It's good times.
Literally, that happened on multiple
Yeah.
occasions.
Yeah. It's very, like, I'm all for the right for people to go out and protest peacefully. 100%. Like, go do your thing. I mean, you used to go down to the Capitol for things, didn't you?
I have been to peaceful protests. Yes, I have.
Holding your sign and doing whatever. I don't know what you were protesting.
I don't know that I've ever gone out and done that, though. You go to rallies and you listen to speakers, and there's a larger group of people. I think during the Tea Party era, which, kudos to the left for turning the Tea Party into right-wing radicals that want to destroy American all-white supremacists. But Tea Party was all about big government, stay away, too much taxes. And so, yes, I went to a couple of those, and it was interesting. What I saw was a bunch of normal people who were there to listen to a speaker and all agree on the same idea. And they picked up their trash and they didn't leave a mess. But there was a couple people, there's white supremacists that were walking through handing out their trash pamphlets. And for the most part, everyone said, get the F out of here.
Right.
We don't want you co-opting our group, our organization, our movement, our message. And they were not tolerated. I mean, they weren't kicked out, but pretty much people just turned their back on them. And the only trash you saw at those rallies were the flyers from the white supremacists. And there would only be 2 or 3 people out of a crowd of 1,000, 1,500. There were white supremacists that were handing out their trash. And people, they would take the flyers, crumple them up, and throw them into the nearest dumpster.
So I spoke a couple years back at a demonstration on the Capitol steps, and I was asked to speak. And
this is in Washington, right?
Yeah, Washington State and Olympia. And it was on the Capitol steps, and they wanted me to kind of speak to the Democrats that we could see kind of looking out the windows and hiding. And they said, we want you to speak. And then, I asked them the same question I asked you the first time that we talked, right? Do you want very calm and cool, or do you want fire and brimstone, right? And they're like, no, we want a little fire and brimstone. We want people to know that, like, we're a little pissed off about this, right? About these laws that are coming. I said, cool. I have one caveat. And they're like, what's that? And I said, well, if I show up and I see any Confederate flags or any swastikas, I don't speak. Yeah. And the guy goes, okay, like I think I get it, but what's your rationale behind it? And I said, well, I assume there's going to be media here. He goes, oh yeah, we're going to have, King 5, Como, Q13, whoever, right? I go, great. The second they see a Confederate flag, that's what this rally becomes.
That's good that you thought of that.
And sure enough, so I speak, right? And I do my 3, 4, 5 minutes, whatever. And I fire and brimstone and I call out and, basically call out these Democrats and whatever. And lo and behold, there's a guy and he's wearing a kilt. And I have nothing against anybody who wears kilts. And he's got
it's very free,
He's got his big Confederate flag and his rhetoric with him. And they go and chat with him and they talk with him. And lo and behold, he wasn't even from Washington State.
Yep.
So when you start talking about like paid agitators, paid protesters, whatever, he was one of those guys that, did not look like a guy that would carry a Confederate flag. He looked like, he rolled out of Evergreen College or something. And he was there to push the narrative.
I know that there's a great many white supremacists out there, neo-Nazis, whatever you want to call them, that show up with their swastikas and their rhetoric and their hate. But there is also a percentage that are not that at all. They are the left that show up to conservative events, flying the flag, trying to make conservatives look bad.
Yes.
And that's absolutely happening out there. I'm not a giant conspiracist. I'm not big on conspiracy theories. But when I looked at what happened on January 6th, the insurrection, I saw agitators on the front lines that looked to me just like the agitators I saw at BLM and Antifa rallies. I am not convinced that, yes, there was probably 95% of those people were conservatives, but I am not convinced that there wasn't a small element of agitators from the opposite viewpoint that wanted to make that demonstration look bad. And I think they did a fantastic job at making it look bad. Now, that doesn't change the fact that it takes one or two Antifa guys to grab a pole and stick it through a window and break in through a door and go into a building. Then 95% of the other people follow in there. Bad on you for doing that. That's trespassing. But I'm not convinced that that wasn't a planned and executed operation by some factor there.
Do you think conservatives
I just trailed off. That's
the
most inarticulate thing I said.
No. That makes sense. Do you think, I don't ever see myself. I mean, it seems like a lot of effort to me. It's a smart play on their part. It's a good tactic. Do you think conservative people do that?
Conservative people do what?
That kind of tactic? Like, would they show up to a...
I'm not saying that they wouldn't. There's absolutely radicals on both sides of both parties. There are absolutely right-wing radicals that would do something like that. There were people at that, I don't want to call it insurrection. It was a protest that turned into a mob. But there was people there absolutely they wanted an overthrow of the government, or they wanted to stop the vote. They want to do something like that. Yeah, there was a percentage of that. I think it was very small. I think the vast majority were just conservatives that showed up and they followed the sheep, because whether you're left or right, I think people are sheep.
What's the difference between that incident and like the numerous times in, say, a state capital that has been taken over by the left?
I mean,
is it the level of destruction? What was different? Because I've seen that, right? They take over a Capitol building and they do their thing.
Well, so you have to understand that a lot of the movement on, I'll use left for lack of a better term. I don't like to say Democrats and Republicans because when it comes to political ideology, it's different than what's actually happening out there. I can only speak to for what we saw when we went to BLM and Antifa riots. What we saw there was a planned and organized. It started off as a protest. They co-opt that protest and turn it into a riot. And I think what we're dealing with there are neo-Marxists. Now, what is a neo-Marxist?
Nice segue, by the way.
What is a Marxist?
You know what? You're going to have to break it all down for me, dude.
I hate to do this, but...
Don't hate.
So Marxism, what is Marxism?
Don't ask me questions.
It's an ideology. It's this idea, is this theory that was started by Karl Marx and co-opted by a lot of people. And it is a political theory of how to run the system. This started in the 1800s in the intellectual salons of Europe. And this whole idea that by the way, capitalism is a derogatory term that was coined by Marxists to describe what is the free market. Marxists, they want to tear down the system that we have, and they wanted to replace it with communism. Communism being the government that of the Marxists. So Marxist is an ideology, communism is the government. And unfortunately, most communist governments turn into a dystopian hellscape. At the very best, you end up with a dictatorship. But in the early form of Marxism, Marxist rallying cry was workers of the world unite. Mm-hmm. What we have today are neo-Marxists. That's new Marxism. And it's no longer workers of the world unite, because it turns out when the workers unite, they start a free market and they get stuff. And it turns out people like shit. And in every single communist society where communism controls the means of production for everyone, it doesn't turn out well for anybody other than the few elites. And you see that in just about any society. You show me a communist system that's actually worked. Communism teaches that everyone is equal, and that's not the case. You can look around society and see that everyone's not equal. What we want in a free market, what we want in a free society is equal opportunity for everyone, but we don't want equality. That sounds bad, but you know lazy people. You know people that will take from the system, never put in. And that happens in communism all the time. Now, I digress. What is neo-Marxism? How does that have anything to do with the riots now? Marxists teach that you cannot change the system from within. You cannot affect change from within. You must tear down and destroy the current system and replace it with your own system. And currently, that's what neo-Marxism wants to do. And when I say tear down the system, I mean break the system so it no longer works, and then you start over and you start fresh. And so when you look around the world today and you see things that don't make sense to you, if you look at it in the lens of neo-Marxism, it starts to make sense to you. And neo-Marxists, they no longer use the slogan of workers of the world unite. What they've done is they've turned it into oppressors and oppressed. And when they divide classes that way, you are either in two groups. Are you the oppressor or are you the oppressed? And they don't care what kind of oppressor you are, and they don't care what kind of oppressed you are. They will take anyone to put into the oppressed category, and it gives them strength to move their cause forward. So that's why you see a lot of times two different systems, two different ideologies that seem not compatible with each other, yet they're together. Why do you see transgender activists protesting for Palestinian rights when if they went to Gaza, they would be killed? Because they've been divided into oppressed versus oppressor systems. And if you're part of the oppressed, you are now an ally.
But do they realize, like, this is what's always, being first generation, right? Like my mom was born in Germany. My Oma, my grandma, was a German war bride, right? She came over to the United States after World War II. So she grew up in Nazi Germany. She was a teenager in Nazi Germany, right? Do these people realize that with all of their lack of ability, lack of work ethic, lack of drive, that when those people, those types of governments take over, that they are now not needed, right? Because in communism, like everybody works, right? Everybody works for the state, right? Everybody works for the common good. So now all of a sudden there's no more free shit, right? I mean, there is, but you got to go work 60 hours this week. You got to go clean up trash. You got to go build whatever, right? Oh no, I don't do that. So do they realize that they will be the first ones that are basically deleted because the system doesn't need them?
That's what revolutions always do. All revolutions, after the revolution is over, the first persons lined up against a wall and shot are the revolutionaries. Yeah. Because they're the radicals. They're the ones that are a danger to the system. So the powers that control the revolution, that drive the narrative, once the revolution is over, the first people they have to get rid of are those that were the actual people on the streets, the ones that were chanting and throwing the bottles. And that's why you see in so many communist society all these purges. That's what you're doing. You're purging revolutionaries, and what you want that are left are the worker bees. And no, I don't think these people understand that. I think, I hate to say this, but I think you're either, the way your brain works is you either see order and you see logic and it makes sense to you, and you live your life and you make your decisions based on that, or you're someone that makes decisions based on emotion and feeling. That doesn't make you a bad person. You know, you and I might want the same thing, but you're going to look at it from an emotional viewpoint. You're not going to look at the logic of what it's going to take to accomplish that. And I think that's one of the problems we have. We have so many young ideological people that are going out there and they're protesting, and they're not thinking about the logic behind it. They're thinking about the emotion behind it. Well, of course, capitalism is bad. Look at these poor young mothers that are single and they're working at McDonald's and they don't have a living wage. And it's just a giant greedy corporation that's getting richer and richer and richer. F these assholes on their yachts. Well, yeah, that's a good sentiment. I don't think we should have a poor class, but that doesn't mean that you go and you tear down the people that create those jobs, create those products. And you have all these young revolutionaries who talk about tearing down the system, and then we'll be free to create art and to make beautiful things. But none of these little revolutionaries wants to be the factory on the second shift at the farm. No one raised their hand and says, yes, in this grand new utopia of communism, I want to be laborer number 264 on the midnight shift on the factory. Because you need a great many people to be workers. And in communism, everyone works ideally for the production for everyone else, but it never happens that way. George Orwell wrote books like 1984 and Animal Farm as a warning of the dystopian future that communism and socialism will bring to us.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. An ideal society would be a blend of both types of people.
Absolutely.
Right? Because, I mean, it's like a marriage, right? If you have, say, my marriage, for example, I'm probably more emotionally driven and my wife is more logical. And it's a great blend because when we make decisions together, it's based on both.
Make love. Sorry, go on.
Let's make a love.
She only makes love for procreation. And no, moving on. But I think that blend is important. And that's kind of where we've lost it a little bit, is now people have taken sides so strongly that there's a refusal to even communicate.
Compassion without order is anarchy. Order without compassion is a dictatorship. You cannot have an extreme on either side. You have to have a blend of both. And you're absolutely right. In my marriage, I'm the more analytical one. My wife's the one that does things more in emotion.
So I'm more like a woman is what you're saying.
Absolutely. You've always been a woman in this relationship.
Yes. little bit petite. But again, right? So you talk about a blend, right? So using the marriage analogy, I can't stand it when people say a marriage is 50-50. There is no such thing as a 50-50 marriage. Never. Every situation that comes up, maybe I'm 10%, maybe my wife's 90% in this situation. In the opposite, maybe I'm 99%, my wife's 1% in this situation, right? Does it equal out to be close to 50-50? Maybe sometimes. I can tell you from my personal experience, being in Western Washington, being in retail, being a kind of a high net worth earner, I brought in way more money than my wife did. Okay, well, now we're over here. I'm opening a business, just struggling to get it going. My wife's the high net worth earner, right? We've never once had that conversation of like, oh, I make more, you make more, this and that. We try to keep it as balanced as possible. But at the end of the day, it's never 50-50. There's always a little give and take. And that's where I think good communication and having a good, honest, open relationship with your partner is needed.
So the country needs marriage counseling is what I'm getting out of this.
No, the country needs a whole lot of counseling. But back to neo-Marxism, you say, well, where are these neo-Marxists? Who are they? All these young kids and these protests and, occupying campuses. Now, how's this neo-Marxism? There is not an overarching central neo-Marxist leader. It's the ideology of Marxism. Now let's look at BLM. Who founded BLM? Patrisse Cullors and her wife and another person founded BLM. And Patrisse Cullors has said repeatedly, we are trained Marxists. She openly says that to anyone who will listen. The leadership, neo-Marxism has invaded our schools, because these ideas can only come from intellectuals who don't ever have to produce something. This can only come from intellectuals who would never have to make a payroll, who never had to actually open a store in the morning, have employees show up, produce a product, keep people happy, bring in profit, learn how to use that profit to grow the business. These people have never done anything like that. There's some ideas out there that are only stupid enough for an intellectual to have them. And these intellectuals have invaded our school system. They have started all the way from the level K all the way up to 12th grade, and they're in our colleges and they're in our universities. And they're teaching this crap. And they don't openly advertise it. And they don't have to even openly advertise that they are neo-Marxist and this their belief. All they have to do is put in the idea. And currently that idea is oppressors versus oppressed. And so you have these kids coming out of colleges, universities with this idea of how the world works. And they've never had to actually face the real world. But these people, I mean, this has been going on for quite some time. And these people are entering the workforce and they're starting to make decisions based on that ideology that capitalism's bad, socialism and communism is good. And it goes beyond just, things like BLM or Antifa. DEI, what's DEI? Diversity, equity, inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that comes from the idea of critical race theory. What is critical race theory? Well, the term critical is what you need to really focus on, because that whole critical theory is one of these things also came out from these intellectual salons in Europe in the 1800s. The idea is that you pick something and you critique it and you find the flaws and you find the good parts of it. But unfortunately, it has turned into something you just critique everything and you tear it down without any thought of why it was that institution was there in the first place. And we see that happening in America all over the place now. Everything is being critiqued. Everything is being attacked. Everything's being torn down. Is America perfect? No. Are our institutions perfect? No. Is law enforcement, law and order, the justice system, are they perfect? No. But that doesn't mean you critique and you only find the bad things, you focus on the bad things and you tear it down. Because what happens when you break the very foundations of our society and our democracy because you were doing that? It took a long time to get here where we are, and it took a lot of bloodshed. And no, we're not a perfect nation, and we should always be striving to be better. But just look around at the world, look at other failed countries and other systems, and you tell me exactly why is it that our system, our society in America is so evil and so wrong. And the problem is with this whole...
Well, because we'll put a spotlight, right? We've got a media system that will put a spotlight on our negative, right? You don't see that negative spotlight being shown in China.
No,
right?
China controls everything.
Exactly, right? So, but we have a media system that now has dedicated itself to kind of spotlight the negative, right? And to push the narrative.
Absolutely. And the terrible thing of our media isn't when you go out there and blatantly lie, which the media is starting to do, but it is how they report and what they report on. So when the media shows up to these protests that you and I have been to, like Seth and I were involved in one in Sacramento where it was hours long, and I hate to say, but we fought thousands of people and we kept the city of Sacramento from being burnt down. It was an all-out battle of J Street, and that's what everyone calls it. And the next morning I turned on my TV to see how the media would report on it. And what they showed were a couple shopkeepers sweeping up the glass and, boarding up their broken window and getting ready to serve croissants and coffee. And they focused on that. They didn't focus on the radicals that were intent on burning that city down that night. And so the general population has no idea what's actually going on out there. And the media, it is how they report and what they choose to report on.
That was the sketchiest night of any riot we have ever been to.
Yeah, it was long, hard.
Gas deployed. It was kind of fun.
Sounds like a good Friday night.
It was kicking off. But yeah, you're right. The chaos was unbelievable. Most people would never imagine. People, they were doing sideshows like behind the line. That's where they're, in a car doing donuts, gunfire, people throwing shit from rooftops, like trying to light businesses on fire, looting. And, I would say we were pretty damn effective that night and keeping it from getting worse.
I mean, this was a culmination of a week, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I don't even know. It all blends into one. And, we were going to these protests every night. And like I said, our goal was state property and keep people off the freeways. And in Sacramento, SAC PD was trying to keep order in the city. But the city council didn't want SAC PD cracking down on anyone. So these people were allowed to build and build and build. And then one night, we got a call of mutual aid from SAC PD requesting our help. And so we were all staged at, wherever our squads were. And we all came and we showed up and we parked along the street and we had to take over an entire city block of street, put guards on either end. So when we left our cars, we wouldn't come back and find them burnt down. Marched around the corner and found SAC PD in an intersection holding, a 4 square of all sides in kind of an Alamo position, being surrounded by thousands of people. And I remember when we marched up and we got inside their perimeter, looking at us SAC PD guys, and their eyes were wide open. And you can tell they were on the verge of just losing it because they had been getting beat all week and all day and all night. And they were at their breaking point. And we were able to come in there, take their front line for them, give them time to pull their guys off the line, rearm. People have been hurt, take care of them, maybe get a drink of water, just calm down for a minute while we held the line. And then we started moving, and we became the focus of thousands of people's aggression on us. Seth will tell you, we would do this order of march where SAC PD would give a dispersal order. It'd be ignored. They'd fire off gas. The people would pick up the gas, try to throw it back at us. And then we would open up with the less lethal and then drive people down the block, and they would disperse. And then we'd have to rearm, take up an Alamo position again in that next intersection, all 4 sides, and do it over. And we did this for a mile or two down Main Street, Sacramento. And if we hadn't been there to take out that aggression, because every single intersection, once we cleared a street and moved down, the people would flood onto the side streets, and they would move forward, and they would try to they would reposition and regroup in the next intersection. But every time that happened, a few people would trickle away and think, I don't want any of this. Yeah. And so what you ended up with at the very end was, 100 or so of the most aggressive people.
Oh, okay. So you guys keep saying, and you guys have said a couple times now, using less lethals, using gas, using sprays, that sort of thing. Okay. So on the LEO side, on the police side, it's all less lethal, right? There's no hot ammunition.
I mean, we have it, but we're not. No,
every single person is armed with your typical duty belt.
Your typical duty belt, right? But you are not approved to go hot, right? To go live.
If you were presented with a deadly force situation, obviously you're always authorized to defend yourself or your partner.
Correct.
Right?
My question though is in these protests, and again, stuff that I've seen on TV, I see, water bottles getting thrown. I see rocks, bricks. I've seen Molotov cocktails. Yeah. I've seen fireworks, right? How close are we from this turning into an actual bang, bang, shoot 'em up?
One cop who loses his shit.
Yeah, really, honestly.
Or one bad guy who just lights off and
there was gunfire, but it's not direct gunfire. And it's back. You don't even know where it's coming from or going.
You're not hearing rounds fly over your head.
Someone's popping off, their Glock up in the air just to, maybe they're just letting off some steam. Maybe they're trying to provoke a response. Maybe they're just trying to look cool. But everything we did, it wasn't directed at us. We have trained for it. We have absolutely trained for scenarios where we're dealing with your typical mob in a riot. And then suddenly someone starts shooting and it goes to a deadly force situation. Thankfully, we never actually had to do that on the line.
That would get real ugly. We always had, each squad would have somebody with an AR. So we had the potential to reach out a
DMR guy. But so looking at like 2012 Occupy Wall Street.
Which was the start of all this.
Right. 2016, which I don't know what they called it, 2016, right?
I can't remember the name.
That was that Ferguson?
Yeah, Ferguson, right? And then 2020, you've got BLM, right? It's weird.
2020 is what changed everything. Right. 2020 is when George Floyd kicked off. Yeah. Now, BLM was founded in 2013, and they slowly grew and they got more and more active. And then it was 2020 when BLM really exploded.
Yeah.
I think they raised $90 million in donations.
But they got it all from alone. Coca-Cola, and they got it from Pepsi, and they got it from Pizza Hut.
Because these companies are so scared of not looking like they're on the right side of history that they'll donate it. And what happened to all that money? What did Pratish Colors do with that money?
She bought a bunch of houses.
She went out and bought 4 houses and spent a couple $1 million. No one knows where. I mean, they've raised multi-millions every single year. 2020 alone, like I said, it was $90 million. Where did that money go to? There is no accounting of where that money went to.
My fear, though, is, okay, so we had 2012 election year, 2016 election year, 2020 election year, 2024, which is lining up to be probably one of the most contentious elections that we've ever seen in the history of the United States. And then now it just seems like every single day that the give a fuck is going away.
Yeah.
Excuse my language.
No, it's fine.
Right. It just seems like the other side is getting more aggressive, right? Like you talked about the sideshows, right?
I think that applies to both sides. I think both sides are getting more aggressive. The radicals on both ends. Now, I can sit here and say that I think one side is getting more radical than the other, but I think that side would obviously sit down and say, no, the other side's getting more radical. But I think both are getting more radical.
Yeah. But you talk about like the sideshows, right? I remember, seeing video sideshows and, in the Bay Area, and a guy would, roll his Trans Am out in the parking lot and there'd be 30, 40 people there. Well, that's happening everywhere in every city around America, right? Yeah. And now it's not the guy who bought a Trans Am to do sideshows. It's the guys that went and stole Hellcats and stole Kias and stole whatever to go do that and just willfully destroy property, right? And it seems like it's just getting worse and worse and worse and worse.
There's definitely an erosion of any kind of respect towards the law and order side of it. And I think that's where, we have the potential to something kick off now. And some of the issue, our SRT team, we were very active. Our guys we had guys that were in, they weren't in,
we had guys in LA with the riots.
Thank you. Yeah. My gosh.
Rodney King, right?
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
So, we had guys with 20 plus years experience doing this stuff on the team, but there are departments out there that never do it. Mm-hmm. And that's the risk. A brand new officer that's never been in that situation, and now he's scared, and someone throws a rock. If someone throws a rock on me at the street and I'm by myself as a cop, like that's potentially deadly force, right?
Someone comes at you with a brick or a rock, you with that person on the street, deadly force.
Now the rules change when you're in full riot gear and you have a helmet and you've got padding. Now someone throws a rock at me. I'm not necessarily a deadly force, even though that can create great bodily harm on me, and I've been hit with rocks and it hurts. We're not there. That untrained guy, brand new guy, scared, he might fire back with lethal. Now you're in a situation that's going to escalate fast.
Or on the flip side, guys that are doing their jobs and they're deploying less lethals, and the guy on the other side's like, you know what?
Yeah, I'm gonna shoot back. Right. And all of a sudden, he's dumping rounds into the line. Right. And so now it becomes this actual hot thing, this actual shooting thing.
Yeah. I'm surprised that actually hasn't happened here.
I had legit fear during those riots of exactly that. Someone behind the line with, a long gun, just dumping into the line of officers indiscriminately.
Not dumping, but an officer getting to the point where he feels that deadly force is needed.
Oh, I meant the other side.
Let's be honest. Let's be honest. Deadly force could be used and justified in virtually every single one of these riots that we've been to. People don't understand the restraint that police officers have on those lines. Yeah, my fear is that one of these days, whichever side fires first, it could be an officer that is pushed to the point he's scared, or he legitimately sees a threat and shoots. And then there's guns on the other side, especially when you're in neighborhoods with, there's a lot of criminal activity, and suddenly they're shooting at the cops. Now all the cops are shooting back.
I have some of the most fearful times I've had on the job were at riots of where like you start to recognize, all right, we've got 100 guys and there's thousands of them. And the only thing keeping us safe is the fact that maybe the badge a little bit, but the fact that we're acting as a cohesive unit and we're trained to do it. If they became more of a cohesive unit and directed that in a dangerous way towards us, that's fearful. There were times when
but it's literally the thin blue line.
Very thin.
It is that line between anarchy, chaos, and actual civilized society. And when people cross that line and break taboos, that's when things fall apart, and they fall apart fast.
We rolled up in Oakland one time, and this was prior to the George Floyd, but there was maybe 100 of us rolled in, and there were 5,000 people on the freeway, and they were trashing shit, they were smashing cars, and it's like we came in and we were able to push them off, but like those numbers,
win that fight.
You can't win that fight.
And the only reason why is because one, like I said, we talked about that 90% there would never do it on their own. But you take that 90% and you agitate them, half of them will start doing shit, and the other half still won't do stuff. But it's the fact that most of those people are not the type of people that would do that. It's the only reason why you can go out there with, I think 100 is a lot more than a lot of times we would have, but
Yeah.
that's the reason why you can go out there with 25 cops and you can control a mob of 1,000 people.
What about though, fast forward now, what we see happening on the southern border, and you see, people that are coming to the United States, obviously because they want to better their lives, but now there's individuals coming from countries that have nefarious intent.
This is where we start talking about Sarah Adams. That's a whole
Is
nother.
that super bad?
No.
Yeah.
Super bad. There you go.
Bad.
Yeah, super bad.
She's awesome.
Yeah, she is awesome.
I
think that's a whole nother
she's gonna catch
podcast
some
there,
flack
though.
for that interview.
Probably.
Yeah.
We're talking about the Sean Ryan show, by the way, that she was on there, and she's a CIA targeter. Some scary info on there.
Episodes 81 and 107, I think.
So yes, there are. I mean, I don't think it's disputed. Maybe some people on the left would dispute it, but that there are now thousands and thousands of people that potentially have bad intent in this country, and yeah, they could show up to that situation, and it wouldn't take much to throw a match in there, and now you've created a firestorm, and that could just be walking up to the line with a pistol or a suicide vest or whatever, being the catalyst.
Our nation has enemies out there that absolutely want to see us fall. Al Qaeda is more strong and more able now than they were pre 9/11. And don't think that our enemies, whether it be Al Qaeda or whether it be China or North Korea, don't think that our enemies won't use our own internal strife and politics against us.
That's a smart play.
What do you
I think our enemies have learned that to use our internal weakness and our internal inability to govern and try to just police our populace against us. They know that we have gotten very, very soft on crime, right? We've become literally anti-cop and pro-criminal.
Yep.
And as a country as a whole, right? Now there's definitely pockets. North Idaho is one of those pockets that is very, very pro-police and very, very anti-crime. But I'm going to Seattle this weekend. Trust me, they're not pro-police. They're not anti-crime over there.
This is something I warn people. Sorry to interrupt, but this is something I warn people about being in Idaho, North Idaho. People come here and they leave whatever hellscape they came from, and they come here and they see freedom and they see order and they see law and they breathe a sigh of relief and they're like, I finally made it.
Yeah.
You got to watch out because there are plenty of people here on the other side, and they show up and the first thing they say is, this is a hellhole, North Idaho. We need to start changing it into our viewpoint.
Yeah.
And those people, they are invading politics. They're the ones to show up to city council meetings. They're the ones to start running for office. They run for school boards. And I don't care how conservative North Idaho is, take a look at the school system. The public school system in North Idaho is as liberal as it is in blue states. That goes back to the whole idea of neo-Marxism that has entered North Idaho schools just like it is anywhere else.
I don't think it's full on though.
It's not full on. It's definitely on the scale.
Potential's there.
But what's happening?
We're beyond the potential. It is actually there. Take a look at some of the school board races that have gone on, like the one that went on up at Priest River. It's absolutely here. Look at the fight we're having with the libraries. Why do you think we're having so many fights with the libraries and books in the libraries? What do you think happened with North Idaho College? What started that entire clusterfuck? There's my F word. What started that was, it was essentially neo-Marxism, oppressor and oppressed. I forget exactly what it was at North Idaho College, but it had to do with the students standing up and wanting a pledge of support from the college and from the faculty and staff for, one of their causes, one of their oppressed versus oppressor causes. And when they didn't get that, that's what started this entire fight with North Idaho College. So it is absolutely here. It's not just a potential, it is here. We're lucky because we have a lot of conservatives in the community, people whose kids go to schools who are willing to stand up against it. But it is absolutely here.
But we do, and you and I've talked about this a lot, and I see this every single day in the store, right? I hear every day, it'll never happen here. This is Idaho. It'll never happen here. This is North Idaho. And I look at guys and I go, respectfully, sir, bullshit.
Yeah.
It will happen here. Now, we don't want it to happen here, but it will happen here. And here's why it will happen here. Voter turnout.
Dismal.
Right? What was it? 13.5%, 14% in this primary?
Why would I show up? We're such a conservative area.
Exactly. But you start looking at who does show up, right? Number one, the people that show up to vote are people that have been here less than 10 years. They show up in force almost 3-1 to go to every election, whether it be a primary or general, that people that have been here their whole lives, like, oh, no, it's Idaho. It's never going to change. It is going to change, right? And so if you want to keep those strong values, you want to keep Idaho conservative, you might have to take a morning off on election day, right? You might have to call in and say, hey, boss, I'm going to come in 2 hours late so I can go vote. You might have to do a little bit of research.
That the research is part of it too, because how many people say, okay, I'm going to show up and I'm going to vote for local elections, and they show up and they look at the ballot and they see names and they have no idea who those people are.
Or they just
might recognize a name.
Yeah.
They just see the R and they want to vote down the ticket.
I've been guilty of that. I have.
And we saw that with this last primary, right? You had the Kootenai County Republicans and you had the North Idaho Republicans, and you start looking at who's who and who's what, and they're not all conservatives. They're not all.
Or you get a conservative that is far more right wing than I want to be. I might align with a lot of their values and agree with them more than I would with a far left. They're too far right wing for me, and they're just going to add fuel to the fire for people who want to defeat them. And then we start fighting internally between a conservative and an ultra conservative.
Fractured conservatism.
We've talked about that before.
Fractured conservatism. That will be the downfall of the conservative parties around the United States in every corner of the country, is fractured conservatism.
Unpopular opinion, but I think both parties are on the verge of a breaking point. I think you have Democrats and left ideology that is, they're allowing the far left and the far extreme to co-opt them. And far too long, people will say, oh, I don't want to be racist. And so you sit back and you shut up and you allow people to come out with DEI and critical race theory, and you don't argue against it. And that's what's going to break the Democratic Party. But the Republican Party is facing the same perils within. The Republican Party does not have a unified message. Look at people like Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't think she understands what a conservative can be, but she is the loudest one up there, and she becomes the voice of conservatism. You turn on the media, who are they going to show? They're going to show the most extreme. And we're allowing her voice to become what the party is. I mean, the Republican Party does not have a unified message and cannot agree. And we are fighting ourselves from within. The most divisive person to ever come into Republican politics is Donald Trump. Shit, I said the Trump word.
That's going to cost you double in the bucket.
How do we fix it?
Good Lord, I don't know how we
Come
fix
on. Give me some answers. Like, I hate to be the person to complain and then not have actionable steps to take to do something about it. I'm very committed to trying to get more people to vote. I don't have a big voice in the area, but I've got somewhat of a voice. And it's like, man, maybe we can, because there are definitely people I talk to in my circle that are like, oh yeah, I was gonna do it, but I didn't.
If you want to see something crazy, Mike Michalski, the owner of Sons of Liberty Gunworks, he just did a tweet, an X post a couple days ago, and he started talking about how many registered hunters in every state did not vote in the last election. And some of these states was crazy. Like, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, so go to X, you can fact check me. But like Ohio, it was like 500,000. 500
did not vote.
Did not vote. Idaho, saw that one, 108,000 registered hunters did not vote.
That's like 5% of our population, isn't it?
I don't like the idea that someone
more than that.
Can go and look and see whether a registered hunter voted or not. I don't like the idea that the government can track whether or not I voted or not and whether or not I have a hunting license.
It's interesting.
But it does,
I get what you're saying, but I don't like that idea.
Show you, right? It does show you that it's like, we as like gun owners, right? And I'll reel it back to like what I'm good at, right? As a gun owner, we always say like, we're never going to get invaded by the Russians. There's too many Americans with guns, right? There's a gun behind every blade of grass, right? And I agree with that. And I'm proud of that, right? But we're fractured gun owners because you have gun owners that are some gun owners are pro-gun and some aren't. There's a lot of gun owners that are not actually pro-gun, and they don't realize that like all civil rights kind of starts from gun ownership, right?
Is that because they might believe you can own this gun, but not
We saw that in
Oh,
Washington.
that other one.
We
is
saw
scary.
this in we saw this in Washington, where we would see guys that would say like, well, as long as they don't come after Grandpappy's 30-30, as long as they don't come after my bolt gun, as long as they don't come after my elk gun, why do you need that scary black gun? Why do you need to have 30 rounds? Da 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 da. And now realize that the left has taken away threaded barrels on certain guns, happen to be Grandpappy's 30-30. They've taken away this, they've taken away that. They don't care. The left doesn't care. The anti-gun crowd does not care what the gun is. It's just a gun. They want to get rid of it. They want to get rid of certain guns faster and certain guns sooner. But the goal is total disarmament. So, at some point you got to draw a line and say, listen, I believe in this and I stand for it.
And what is frightening is I've always said, come from California and some of the crazy anti-gun laws, we cannot ban guns. It's a constitutional right, Second Amendment. But we sure as shit can make it really hard for someone to get a gun. We can make it really hard to get the ammo for the gun, the type of gun, microstamping. And I've often said, if you really want to get rid of all these guns, change the Constitution. Now, I don't want that to happen, but all these gun people out there, anti-gun people, you're fighting an uphill battle because as long as the Second Amendment is there, we will have guns. But you start hearing politicians now, and Gavin Newsom's one of them, saying we need to have a referendum and we need to change the verbiage of the Second Amendment. And that is getting more and more popular support.
That for the guys that protect me and my family, right? Is that what he says too? Because
he doesn't say that outright, but that's exactly what he's saying.
Because that's the double standard.
Yeah, rules for you, but not for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I came from Western Washington, the home of Bill Gates, right? And if you happen to have a boat and you want to take your boat and cruise Lake Washington, you can pull up in front of Bill Gates's house. And within about 15 seconds of you pulling up in front of Bill Gates's house, his security team comes out and makes their presence known. Now, my buddy,
that's okay, because when you pull up to my property, you got about 15 seconds till I make my presence known too.
But my buddy that lives on the other end of the lake, if he were to go out on his dock and flag people off and wave people off and tell them to get the hell out of there, but why is it okay for Bill Gates or Bezos or blah, 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 or whoever, right? Because they got money?
Because they donated to the sheriff's reelection campaign way more than you did.
Oh, well, that's frustrating.
A lot of money coming into North Idaho right now for the sheriff's campaign, isn't there?
Yeah, that's a big one right now. It's interesting.
Depending on what county you're talking about. There's some internal politics in some counties around here when it comes to the sheriff. They're quite interesting and amusing.
Yeah, I've been doing, and again, like we've talked about, I have not chose a horse in the race yet. I'm because I truly believe that I'm new to the area, right? And so I want to learn who everybody is before I cast my one vote. But man, there's some shenanigans going on.
Yeah. And I've talked to both guys running for Kootenai County Sheriff on this podcast. So if you're curious about that, you can dig up those old episodes and hear what they have to say in long format, which is kind of helpful.
Lost your train of thought.
No, I was going to say, like, I'm kind of just probably keep it quiet who I'm thinking, whose camp I'm in, but yeah.
Squirrel.
I think one of the problems you're having is you have an old school way of doing things in North Idaho. And you have a lot of those old school people that are entrenched in their ideas and how they think they should be done, who don't understand that Idaho is changing and is growing. And you will have to change how you do things if you want to be successful in North Idaho.
Well, a lot of them, I'm not trying to talk smack, but that's all they do is they just get mad about it and then blame it on Californians. And it's like, that's not constructive. And I ask people, I get comments all the time on YouTube, like, nasty comments about bringing Californians here or whatever. It's entirely my fault, by the way. And it's like, you don't quite understand the caliber of people, at least that we deal with in our real estate business. They're like us, and they're coming up here with an intent to raise their families in a good place, and they don't want it to change. And now you've got these old school people that are just yelling and hollering. And I asked them, I'm like, did you get out and vote? Like, are you doing something?
What have you done to change your community and make it better?
Right. Because just sitting around complaining is not doing anything.
If it wasn't for the growth here and the money that comes in, Idaho would be a backwater. And it was a backwater for decades. That's why people came to Idaho. They wanted to disappear in the woods where it was almost like a third world country. I'm not saying Idaho is a third world country. Calm down. But Idaho was very backwoods compared to a lot of the other places in this country. And that's why people came here. And that's changing. I'm sorry, but that's the truth and the fact of the matter. You cannot stop that.
Just shoot me a private message. I'll give you Sam's address.
Well, it's
If you want
crazy.
to go to Backwoods now, you need to go to North Main.
What's crazy is, with your business, it's crazy how much your business and my business are starting to intertwine, and it's natural, right? It's not a paid partnership. It's Seth and I talk, but it's nothing crazy, but it is the fact that conservatives want to move to North Idaho, right? And they're coming from these places that maybe they don't feel appreciated. Maybe the law works against them in their beliefs. And so they reach out to Seth, they reach out to your group, and they find a beautiful house and they buy a house and it's awesome. And then they all come into North Idaho Arms and they're like, dude, I saw you on Washington Gun Law. I saw you on Residing in North Idaho Experience, right? And Seth's my realtor and he helped me move and blah, 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 blah. And like, what kind of gun can I buy? And it's like, man, this is Idaho. You can get pretty much anything you want, man. But it's crazy because I never thought moving here and being open to the public now, 5 months, I never thought that I would be like this political lightning rod, or I'd be like this super, super pro 2A. Like, I'm unapologetically pro 2A, right? But I never thought that I would be the guy that literally hundreds of people a week walk into the store and go, I saw you on YouTube. I saw you on Fox News. I saw you on this. And I just wanted to come in. Like, literally, I just wanted to drive 3 hours to come spend $100 just to support you. I never thought that would happen. It's
Well, so
very,
you could
very
just
humbling.
mail the $100 and I'll take that.
Yeah, I mean, and trust me, we get people all the time that are like, "Hey, what can we do to help you? What can we do to support you?" And it's super, super humbling, and it's amazing. But it kind of shows it's a testament to what's going on in America, right? Like, why are all these people wanting to leave these areas and come here?
Yeah. And some of them, I mean, the sacrifice that these people are, and myself included, are willing to endure to get their families to a place like North Idaho is unbelievable. We get lots of laterals to the police department up here. These guys are coming from jobs where they're making 150, 200,000 a year. They come up here and like maybe 70. I don't know what they make up here right now, but it's a huge pay cut and they're willing to do it. It's that important.
I'm working with a guy right now who works for a water district on the west side. With the benefits and this and that, he's probably 105, 110 a year. And I think CDA water district pays like $18 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like trying to figure out, how do I do this? Because I want to move over here and I don't want what's home. Yeah. I don't want what's back at home. I want what's here, right? So how do I make this work? That amount of sacrifice is mind-boggling.
Yep.
That people, especially me, right? Like, I opened a business at 48. I should have done this 20 years ago. I opened a gun store at 48 years old, right? I'm gambling everything that I have and everything that my family has for hoping that in 20 years, maybe I can retire, right? I should have did this 20 years ago. Yeah. But I'm willing to make that gamble because, again, like we said in a million times in a million different places, my marriage is healthier. My mental health is better. My daughter's mental health is better. Her education is better. It's just where we needed to be. Might not be for everybody, but it's where we needed to be.
Yeah. There's lots of people out there with that same feeling. So, okay, we have a rough idea of how to keep North Idaho the same as it is. Like, what happens if these neo-Marxists keep coming in, and like, what happens if North Idaho falls? Then what?
Well,
What's
I mean,
left?
North Idaho isn't a linchpin holding the country together.
It might be.
It's not. We do need to be proactive, and that's something that we're not good at. Liberals and Democrats, I hate to label them, but they like to be proactive. They like to go out there. They like to get involved. They like to be part of community. Where conservatives and Republicans tend to be like, hey, listen, I'm going to live my life. You live your life. As long as you don't mess with me, I ain't going to mess with you. And so we don't get involved. And you ask, what can you do to change it? Other than sitting here on a podcast and bitching, you can get involved. When's the last time you went to your city council meeting?
Good point.
Do you know who your county commissioners are?
Only one.
Do you know how many county commissioners?
Yeah.
I rhetorically ask these questions, but how many people have no idea even how their local government works, much less who is on it, what their ideas are, what their viewpoints are? You want to get involved, start going to your city council meetings. Learn who the players are. And most of the time, you don't even need to go and show up. You can watch it. Most of the time, they stream this stuff, and you can watch it from home. That's the very first thing you need to do when you ask what can you do is become aware of what your community's like and who's in your community.
I just met with a lady this morning. What's up, Truk? Shout out. And she is very new to the area, and she was already saying, I'm down at the city council meetings and I'm paying attention. I also sent her to a gun shop, by the way. You'll see her there soon. And I was like, wow, like that was inspiring to me. I've never been to a city council meeting here.
Here's the question, though. How many conservatives have you met in Idaho? That's rhetorical.
Yeah,
a lot.
A lot.
How many have you met like her that say and they do that?
He's the only one.
There you go. That's the problem.
Yep.
Well, you introduced me to Representative
I was just going to ask about that.
Jordan. So you introduced me to him. Little text message back and forth. So we met for coffee. We went to Life.
Awesome.
Right. Went to Life Public House, had a coffee, sat and talked for about an hour. And then the next morning, I was on the phone with his legal assistant in Boise, and we were trying to define and codify and figure out what we need to do for next legislative session, right? We were talking about, trying to future-proof Idaho, the disease and the problem that happened in Washington, especially with like the Consumer Protection Act laws, would not be able to take hold in Idaho. And we got some answers. I got some answers. So I got a game plan of which way we need to go. But then that now has opened up where I've gotten guys from the Benewah County Republican Party to come in that are like, hey, we want you to come and chat and talk because we want to forward some legislation next year to help solidify and help protect Idaho moving forward. We want to know what happened in Washington. And so again, like you said, get involved, get started, be active, be aware, like all of that matters, right? And not everybody's going to do maybe what I do. Not everybody's going to do what you do. Not everybody's going to do what you do, right? But it starts with just personally believe having conversations with people and not getting your panties in a twist when you talk with somebody that maybe doesn't agree with you. You and I might not have the same, we might not believe the same thing on everything, right? But you're not a bad person.
And we shouldn't.
No. And again, I'm not going to have my panties in a bunch because I believe this or you believe that or whatever, right? You're a God-fearing American sitting here expressing your opinion. Your opinion's valid. I should listen to it just as you should listen to mine. You don't have to agree with mine. I don't have to agree with yours. But that's step one, is just like actually communicating and talking with people. And maybe when I go home tonight and I replay this in my head a little bit, I pick up one or two things that you said and I go, man, I need to smarten up on a couple things.
Yeah.
And you get a little bit smarter and you get a little bit better. That's, I think, where everything starts. Then getting out and voting and getting to your polling places and actually making your voices heard.
I am thrilled that you were able to connect with Jordan Redmond. Like, how cool is that to have, a state legislator that in town that's very accessible. I met him through Dave Miller at Life, and I texted him. He's like, let's get coffee. And I was like, oh, I'm sitting down with a state legislator. Just cool, normal guy. He's always down to listen to the people in his jurisdiction. It's like, that's cool.
And I'm sure that guy has so many constituents that are coming to him with so many different things. So for him to sit down with me for an hour and then get on a phone call for 90 minutes and then, start, I think they called it purple slipping me or something, into this email chain with these lawyers in Boise. And it's like, dude, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like, this is pretty cool. Like, this is like, okay, this is how things work.
Now
right?
you're potentially affecting actual change,
Correct.
right? Yeah.
Right. Because the one thing that, like, when you and I first talked, the very first podcast we ever did, is we talked about, my vision and my goal of wanting to try to safeguard Idaho against some of these laws, the Consumer Protection Act laws that were used against the Second Amendment and used against the citizenry in Washington. And you're like, please promise me that you're going to actually do this. Yeah. Please promise me this. Don't just be another guy that's going to be here bullshitting and saying you're going to do whatever and pimping your store out, right? And so, no, we are actually trying to do this, right? We want to make sure that Idaho is safeguarded, not just tomorrow, but 10 years from now, 20 years from now.
Yeah. And find something that you can do, right? I don't have a lot of talents in life, but I'm pretty damn good at connecting people. I can confirm that. Thank you. I'm pretty damn good at connecting people. So like if that's my contribution to put you in touch with the right person, boom, There you go. Now I can feel like I'm affecting change too and not just crying about it.
Good on you.
Thanks, buddy. That was the nicest thing you ever said to me.
Yeah, I said a couple other nice things. How about the time I took care of you when you were really, really sick?
That's true. That happened. Gentlemen, we're at an hour and 15 minutes. I know you guys got time crunches. Well, one of us does.
Oh, I got time crunches too. Thank you very much. I am well past my mid-afternoon nap.
Well, I sure enough don't do like physical crunches, so there has to be a time crunch. So, yeah.
I actually like thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. You guys are both super smart, and I thought putting you in a room together would be a beautiful synergy, and I was not wrong. So, thank you. And thanks, Sam. We got to have this back and have this conversation again about other things, because I think that's, like you said, that's where it starts, is having these conversations, but then also finding actionable things that we can do, like talking to a state legislator and moving the needle in the right direction a little bit. So
I would love at some point, I would love to have a fervent anti-gun believer sitting right here to educate me on why disarming the American populace should happen. Like I want that to happen, right? I want that person to sit here because I want them to be able to try to get 3 sentences out without saying, think, I feel, and getting all in their feelings and start screaming.
What I love to do, and it's so hard to do these days, I love to have conversations with people who believe differently than me. Yeah. And when you can have conversations with people who believe differently than you without yelling at each other and talking past each other, you can learn about why they believe what they believe. I think as Americans, we have far more in common than we have differences. If we could sit down and we can talk and get an understanding of why you believe what you believe and why I believe what we believe, and is there any way for those beliefs to join up together and we could find a way to accomplish it? Because right now, when we're fighting with each other and we're disagreeing, we're not accomplishing anything.
We're accomplishing the agenda of some foreign entity.
No, we're definitely making someone who wants to sow division with us. We're making them happy. And I guarantee you there's a lot of people out there that are more than happy to see America tearing itself apart.
Yeah. So if anyone's out there and you know somebody that's willing to come to North Idaho and have that conversation in a cordial manner, I'll sit in the middle. That way there won't be any fists flying. Not from your side. I think you're a pretty chill dude, but we would love to have that conversation. I'm totally open to that. I think that'd be great.
You just can't, your argument can't start with, I think, or I feel.
And you can't just immediately say you hate Trump.
Exactly. Right. Like come with actual facts, because here's the thing. If I talk with somebody, or if I go in with an anti-gunner, I will use the FBI crime stats against you 100%. So brush up on them.
Love it.
Brush up on them.
Well, watch out, because currently there is a movement in the Department of Justice where they are manipulating those very same statistics.
They are.
To show why the crime is down, which it is not.
Yeah. Let's leave that as a teaser for the next one. You guys both need to brush up. We're going to talk about that.
All right.
The last thing I want to say to your viewers, all 4 of them, is everyone out there listening to this, right now, when you're done, take a moment, Google who is on your city council or your county commissioners. Just do that. Find out who they are, if nothing more than that.
Send them an email. Just sending an email to your local representation and just say, hi, my name is, and I live here. I wanted to introduce myself. See if they send you an email back, even if it's a canned response.
You'll learn who's going to give you a canned response because they're not listening to you, and who's going to actually come back, and you can get a live person, and then they might actually care about you.
Yeah. Boom. There you go. There's some actionable steps you can take. Thank you, gentlemen. Sam, always a pleasure. BZ, always a pleasure. Go check out North Idaho Arms in Post Falls. My man's got the knowledge for you. Appreciate it, guys, and we will catch you next time.